Hello, this is Nick from Regular Games, and today we're going to talk about utilizing timers in your games of DCC and other D&D-like games. Alright, so let's talk about utilizing timers, but before we jump into it, if you like this video, if you find it useful, valuable, interesting, entertaining, please like, subscribe, comment down below, because that will direct this video in the algorithms to more eyeballs. It is really greatly appreciated, especially considering I've been on a little bit of a video hiatus lately, and so getting this to more people would be ideal. Alright, let's jump into talking about timers. So at Gen Con, I was having a fantastic conversation with Josh Yoder, the author of H2O Apocalypse, a recent DCC compatible zine. We were sitting at Lucas Oil Stadium on the last day of the convention and just talking about adventure design. And he asked me, because he was going over some notes that he had jotted down for an adventure that he was working on, how I would handle the timing of a particular situation in his adventure. And so that got me to thinking about, well, what are the different types of timers that we utilize in our games? So first and foremost, the classic is rounds. So built into the mechanics of classic D&D, things like spell effects are, based on rounds, turns, hours, days, but in a lot of encounter design, in classic D&D modules, there will be circumstances where, for example, reinforcements come in to the combat on round 2 or round 3 or round 4. Or you might have a random roll situation. Professor Dungeon Master actually talks about this frequently and utilizes it in his adventures, and I utilize it in mine as well. Wide-Eyed Terror, which is one of my shorter zine adventures, it utilizes a timer for when you roll a D3 plus 1, or maybe it's just a D3. It's one of the two. When one of the adversaries throws a bunch of smoldering ashes around the farmstead, causing the farmstead to start on fire. But because they're smoldering, I decided to put a timer on it so that the players would have a chance, the PCs would have a chance to put out the fire before the whole house catches and burns down. I also utilized it in Tragedy at Woodwitch Rise for the amount of time when the PCs get to the final boss fight to determine how long it would take for the Woodwitch Gisalia to swallow Anise Mutt-Wrangler into her hollow before the piece, so that the PCs have a time limit on how long they have to save this character Anise Mutt-Wrangler from this tree. It is a really effective way to light a fire under your players and get them to act. So yeah, rounds is a fantastic design tool, but it's not the right tool for every situation. So many of you have been hearing all of the virtues about Shadow Dark, and Shadow Dark really brought to the fore the idea of torch timers, setting a timer of 1 hour for how long a torch will burn, and if that torch goes out without being relit, then bad things can happen to the players. And I love this real-time mechanic. I actually had utilized real-time mechanics in my adventure Cleft in the Mangled Hills. Cleft in the Mangled Hills, I set a timer for 15 minutes once the players get into the dungeon, and every 15 minutes the water level in the dungeon goes up. And so I set the timer, and then at the 15-minute mark, the timer goes off, and I let everybody know there's a rush and a whoosh, and all of a sudden the water level is higher in the dungeon. And this obviously is going to cause the PCs to panic. And it is a really effective method for moving the action along. I also, once I learned about torch timers in Shadow Dark, I was like, that's a fantastic idea. And so I quickly adopted it to my DCC games. And so I'm a little heartless, and so I use torches that last 30 minutes instead of an hour. But that's also because the usual session that I run in my home games is about 2.5 to 3 hours. And so yeah, it just makes sense to really kind of move the action along when you're playing with a shorter session. Okay, so we talked about rounds, we talked about real timers. So the situation that Josh was specifically dealing with was actually in a role-playing situation. The PCs would be in a party-type environment, and something explosive in action would happen in the party at a certain point, and he was trying to figure out how he was going to handle it, timing this. And so what I personally do in a lot of my adventures is I will have something called atmospheric bumps. And they're kind of like wandering monster tables, but though there will occasionally be a monster result, most of the time an atmospheric bump will be, cackling in the distance somewhere in the dungeon, or a boulder rolls down the hill in the gully that the PCs are walking through. And so there's a whole bunch of things. I'll have a table of between 5 and 7 events that can take place, and I utilize those when there's a dip in the action. So when the players are looting a body, or they're arguing about what they want to do, when things start to drag, then I'm like, roll a d5 or roll a d7 and have the PCs roll for some sort of event that takes place. And this is actually perfect for the situation that Josh was describing. When you have a bunch of people all interacting with NPCs at a party, there's going to be a moment where everybody's kind of like talked their way to whatever ends they're trying to get to, and there's a stall in the moment, and that's when you want to hit them with an action that takes place and turns things upside down. You might even do something where certain conversations could trigger it or whatever. But the idea is that at some point there is a moment in the discussion that isn't based on a time, a real time limit, and not based on rounds, because in RP situations you generally aren't in rounds. It's something that is triggered by the conversation or just by the lack thereof, a stall in the action. And so, yeah, these are all fantastic ways that you can handle timing in adventures, and I highly recommend utilizing all 3 of them in the adventures that you create. If I did not mention a type of timer that you utilize in your games or that you've seen in various adventures that maybe I didn't think of, and yeah, please put them down in the comments down below so that I can expand my own knowledge of timers. So I hope this was useful and interesting. If as I said, if you find it interesting, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Additionally, you can support me on Patreon, and I've got a video to tell you all about it. How would you like to get grimdark content sent to your mailbox every month? Become a noble patron on the Breaker Press Patreon, and you will get cool stuff like encounter pamphlets and class guides sent to your mailbox. It's $5 and above. Go check it out in the doobly-doo below.